What's up, my Numbugs? It's you boys here from the Elestrals to give you an idea of what to expect from the Moonrise meta. At the time that we're recording this, it's legal tomorrow or today?
Arguably 8 minutes ago.
It is currently 12:08 a.m. I don't know about you all, but I'm really excited about everything that Moonrise is bringing to the game. The fact that things are getting much faster, the fact that things are way more exciting than just fives.
Yeah, I'm real sick and tired of adding 2 and 3 together and just seeing if that works. You know, it's really cool too. Cause thinking in our preliminary testing that we've been doing, collectively all of us at the same amount exactly, and definitely not disproportionate to Josh, that a lot of these decks seem like the speed is much more enhanced. The actual strength of individual cards is much more balanced, is the right way to put it. But all of them seem to have really good give and take, which is nice. And there's a lot of interesting strategies, regardless of the decks we've seen before. I think these are some of the most interesting strategies we've seen from Elestrals to date.
Easily. There's a lot of very, very cool stuff in this set, and I'm right there with you. I tested a good bit when the cards were first being shown off. I haven't done a whole ton since, but it sounds like there's a lot of really cool stuff going on, so I'm excited to get through this.
And I have tested this set way too much already.
He's ruined it for himself. See, I have the pleasure of having an LGS nearby, so I'm saving myself for release date.
Okay, so I guess we should talk about a little bit of the elephants in the room, which is decks from last format. We can kind of briefly touch on them, but we have a few of them on the list. I think we'll just bring out fives, right? This big old Galaxy. Where are we gonna put Galaxy on this list? Because fives was a reign of terror for the past couple formats, right? Every time that something gets hit or gets taken care of, five seemingly rears its head. So where do y'all feel comfortable putting fives? I honestly don't know. Comparatively, if it's a B tier, a C tier even.
I think it's pretty safe to always put fives in A, especially at the beginning of a format. While everybody's still trying to figure out what the best decks are, fives will always be a safe pick because of how spirit efficient it is. Even though it's not the most exciting thing, I'm sure that everybody is going to want to try out the new toys. But if you're looking for a safe tournament pick, you can't go wrong with fives. My only concern is that the new bar for what a good stat line is seems to be raised from 5 to 6 or 7.
True.
And fives can have an issue with that.
Which I think is probably where we want fives to be ultimately, which is nice. And a lot of really strong tools there, and even adding those tools into stuff like the new water engines, right? Or the new earth stuff is pretty cool, right? I know Viscerous and stuff will still get played, but...
Well, I think that there's a distinction between a lunar-ish fives type list, but that might be a totally different deck that we have later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Earth Nexus, the other powerful hitter from the last couple formats. Where do we want to put Earth Nexus? Because I feel like this deck's probably changed going into Moonrise, but I don't know if I'd put it A anymore. And this is also considering the limits, right? We do get Demeter back, which is beautiful, but Equilinx is seemingly still at 1, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm kind of down with putting this at almost a B tier. I think honestly the strategy for me right now is too slow.
Yeah, I think that the power of this deck is popping back row, and I think that this format's going to be a lot more Elestral heavy. I think that we're going to see back row be a lot less impactful, and so it's a lot less meaningful when you don't really want to be setting a whole ton of back row anyway because Hurricane.
Ooh. Josh, anything there? I know you're kind of Earth's strongest soldier for the longest time.
Hurricane's existence is a buff and a nerf to Earth, and it kind of always has been. The best way to play into Earth was always just to set one back row. It's going to be a thing of remain to be seen, but I don't think that Earth Nexus is the most powerful version of Earth anymore.
Ooh.
I personally would put it down to C.
To C tier?
Really?
Whoa.
I feel like if it's that bad, maybe we can unlimit Equilinx, honestly. If it really performs that poorly, I think that there's justification to bring it off the list.
I kind of agree. That's partially why I'm a little bit afraid of putting it any lower here, because if it does perform that poorly, Equilinx does get brought back. And I do think it can. This is the weird part. I agree. I think that it can get brought back in the upcoming format, because I just cannot imagine Equilinx being able to outpace some things on this list. I think a solid middle tier of SA and B. Now slowly looking at this list, realizing that our naming scheme is completely off from our last tier list. Dear Lord, holy God. But I guess
it's okay. No one remembers.
Yeah,
it's fine.
One quick change. F tier.
F terrible
for sure. All right, so Fire Nexus. Speaking of F tier, No.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
Fargo is here, and Fire did get some new tools, right? I think the Bellowbee was one. Torchin, let's go. Fire Healer, yeah.
Let's go.
Which is super cool. I don't know. I think that Scrap and Fargo and some decks that rely a lot on Nexus or like a specific Nexus Elestral does have a place in this meta specifically, and I think Elestral Removal, as Caleb said, the Elestral heavy meta is like much more prevalent here, is pretty strong. I think I would probably put it in B tier, but I can hear arguments for C as well. This is where I would put it at. What about you guys?
I'm gonna make an argument to put it up to A.
To A tier, okay.
Especially with Elestrals being really big and the speed of the game getting faster. Fire and the ability to pop cards with Kinleo will be much more valuable, especially with Earthquake and Laurels being at 1. And if back row isn't nearly as impactful, you're gonna need removal.
Yeah, I think as 5s ends up sort of rotating out of the format, Cryoblasting a Kinleo becomes a lot less likely. And that instantly, I think, is a buff to Fire Nexus, frankly.
Yes,
like, getting
absolutely.
Cryoblast out of the format makes this deck so much better. But if then it's good, it enters side decks and then the deck becomes worse. I think that this is maybe one of the most critically in the balance decks we have.
Yeah, and in the fair side of things. Speaking of fair side of things, and this is going to be one I might just abstain from because I've never touched this deck. Healstall. Healstall was a deck that, War Crimes previously, very much in these simplified game states and simplified metas, Healstall can just play cards, destroy things on the board, and then heal back any spirits that it lost. Where are we placing Healstall in the new meta for Moonrise?
I'll say no, don't lower. We'll say C. We'll say C.
Okay.
Really interesting.
Spoiled Fruit is a card.
I don't think it's that good. What, you have a 3 of that hits a couple cards in the deck? Like,
It's more of the issue that it also destroys the card, because at least before you were able to block some damage with even a Sluggle. Like, you're not taking 3 or 4 damage to the face. But with how fast the game is getting, not having at least the blocker matters a lot. I mean, I can see Spoiled Fruit being played as a mandatory card in sides.
yeah, I definitely something that makes it the side no matter what. I feel like that Spoiled Fruit is going to see a lot more success as we start to see more cards like Dracoray. I think that's where Spoiled Fruit becomes really, really good. But into Healstall, I honestly don't think it's like that. It's like not bad.
It's funny because I think that where we talked about the large stats becoming a lot more prevalent in Moonrise, I think also too, with the pacing of everything, Healstall might be able to heal back at a pretty decent pace, but on a combination of Spoiled Fruit, but then also the fact that the next turn after the healings are even done, you might have to heal back double time, like twofold, right? Like those 3 spirits from Sluggle, you might have to do 6 in a turn just to catch back up.
I think that where the Healstall deck has to pivot is much more into Water Reanimator, because that's where you can keep pace while also still keeping the benefits of Healstall. I think that's where this deck has to go to be able to survive. But in like a true Healstall, like the way it was being played back when Laurels was at 3, yeah, sure, I can agree that deck is definitely C tier.
All right, so we have 2 more to talk about inside of the kind of old guard of decks. One of them is a fan favorite. The other one is a deck that got some new tools, and I'm so sorry, Brewlock, in advance for leaking the tech. So we have Bears for the fan favorite. Personally, I might put a B for Bears. It's got some reasonings, but I could also see an argument for A, kind of a solid rocks for Galaxy. But there's only like 2 pilots in the world that I can see that being the case for. So I'm down with putting it on B tier, honestly.
Local Legends ass deck, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I just don't know if it can compete in terms of the stat lines.
No. Okay, I would not say F.
Okay.
But yeah, as we've been saying a couple times now, it's just the stat line to beat now is 7 or at least 6. And Bears already struggled to hit a threshold without Don't Poke. I think you have to play like Argo in Bears, and Bears I don't think wants to play Argo. I don't think it's got the space or the spirits to be able to afford that. I just don't think that this deck has the same kind of pace versus a different beater style deck that is in Lunar probably.
The fact that we went from Daybreak, which gave Bears one of the best support cards it could have ever asked for, to absolutely 0 support in Moonrise is what moves this so low. on this list. That is the problem. I think like if you do take this to locals, you'll have some success with it, but I wouldn't expect the same amount of success that you would have had last format when like even Bears is a decent matchup into fives.
All right, so if you skip this far into the video, by the way, we've reordered this to make it maybe a little bit easier for our rankings, but then also, make it consistent. I'm also abstaining from doing the funny tiers. Just because She Tops is a great metric, and 9/11 tier for sure. The last one, and so sorry Brewlock to leak this, for our old guard, Krakatuga. Krakatuga is really funny to me because I think this deck is really cool. I'm glad that it will see some experimentation, and that's solely because of one singular card, and that's No Stone Unturned. No Stone Unturned, it's the 2-cost Earth that allows you to search for a Golem card. I think Golem is the subclass. It's little face, it's little Maui face. One of the most powerful Ascension lines, which the issue before was actually seeing Krakatuga often, is a Golem subclass. It's Krakatuga. I don't know if I'd put this in meta contender because of that reason.
No.
But I'm down to put it in Rogue because I think that it's definitely a deck that will see a lot of experimentation and could put up some results because Burn I think is good against one of the better decks in the format. But that's just my main argument for it. It's like it'll be a niche pick.
I gotta top with Krakatuga. I would love to see it do something again. Like, goddamn, this deck is very interesting, but it sucks so hard. And I don't know if No Stone Unturned is enough, but it's definitely enough to make it Rogue.
So we got some of the new stuff out of the way. There's technically a few familiar faces on here that we'll see, but we'll talk about them more, I guess, in the new context of the decks. Let's talk about Trifernal real quick. We'll just go down the line. Trifernal it got like one new tool in the form of Hurricane, right? Like
one card.
The big thing with Trifernal that you were always trying to do is collect your combo pieces to hit your opponent for a lot of damage. It technically, if you're talking to Wirtz, did get a new tool in the form of the Artemis, the Artemis artifact, right? Which does technically replace the Bow of Apollo. But other than that, though, I think a deck that can consistently clear back row, which was a challenge, dome for a lot of damage, that is pretty scary to me. I'm down to put it inside of meta contender for that reason, just for some early results, but I can see Rogue as well. What do y'all think?
I'll make an argument for Rogue,
okay,
just because although the deck is terrifying, and like Hurricane is really good.
Yeah.
Hurricane is very good specifically for this deck in particular. The issue that this deck will have over others is the fact that typically it doesn't play a lot of counter runes. Against these much quicker strategies, the odds of you seeing all of the tools to do the OTK in time is much lower. Sitting on a small Tuga is not going to be enough anymore.
No, not at all.
It's scary that 5 isn't enough. Centaurbor. Let's talk about Centaurbor, the other starter deck boss. So Centaurbor is a deck that gets really, again, one new tool, pretty much. Like you can technically play some other shenanigans with it, but Josh, you've been playing a lot of this deck. Tell us about it.
I played a lot of this deck today.
True.
For the first time, and I am sold. This deck is good now. Like, I would say that this is a meta contender.
Okay.
And I can't believe I'm saying that. It's Centaurbor.
It's awesome.
So the one issue that Centaurbor has always had is that how in the world do I get a 3-drop on the field? And all of a sudden, Paleoth has become one of the most broken Earth cards that we could have ever had. The classic from Frostfall, because of Cedar Soar.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. That card is busted.
Why'd they print that card?
In case you're unaware, you would go Paleoth. When it gets destroyed, it would dump something to the underworld, and then you add a copy of whatever you dumped to the underworld to your hand. When you dump Cedar Soar, it casts itself, I want to say free, but like now you have a 2-drop on your field. It's like really big foamy, which now allows you to go into your Centaurbor plays. Alternatively, too, if you happen to properly enchant it, you can also search for Centaurbor. So like now you have way more consistency than you had before getting to your Centaurbor and getting it online.
It's shouts to Helen, by the way. It's like a really cool strategy that I think inside of Daybreak, I remember experimenting with it a little bit as like an Earth scrap deck almost, where you're playing the Septembers, you're playing Argos, you're trying to like maximize the turbo of it all. And that seemed like it had some fringe uses that like 1 or 2 more cards maybe could have made it work. And the Paleoth line is legitimately scary. It's awesome. He's so hot.
True. Wait a minute.
Meta contender for sure. Speaking of the big bodies, the other all-star of the previous starter decks, Penterror. We have Penterror on this list because Penterror might be able to put up some results here. I'm okay with putting Penterror here in Rogue, personally. I think that Wind got some new stuff, which is cool. I know that we have some people experimenting with Wind, and for my money's worth, Penterror is strong enough to hit over some of the largest Elestrals that we will see in the format, which is good. I think that alone gives it some weight. But I think Wind overall still, unless you're playing another variant of Wind, might be a little too spirit heavy, maybe a little too expensive. I'm down for Rogue. What about you guys?
Yeah, that seems fine.
Big Dragon, go Rogue. All right, let's take a brief moment to talk about in the middle here, the new stuff. Lunar is the new buzzword for it. We can go over some of the Lunar decks here. Pharogeist. Let's start with Pharogeist. That's the big bad boss of last format. Super scary, limited, yada yada yada. Talk to me about this one. What's your guys' thoughts?
It got hit to 1, and it's still top tier, baby.
Let's freaking go, dude. It's peak. It's peak. It's camel.
I wouldn't call it peak, but okay.
It's camel. It's camel.
It's camel. It's peak because of the pyramid, Yeah, this deck is really strong. Pharogeist has always been this, like, I don't want to say ticking time bomb because it's a little bit hyperbolic, but it's like, unless you have specific forms of removal, this thing will just kill you. And that's something that is really scary. Cards like Comalis can now search this card, so it makes it a little more consistent. And even if you were to unlimit this card, frankly, I think you would probably still just play 1 or 2. You might just even play 1 for consistency, right? It's like you have more consistent ways of getting to it. Your game plan doesn't necessarily have to revolve around waiting until you get it now. And it is of large body, which, again, the stat line of like a 9, is it 9-13? I'm really trying not to say 9-11. I'm really trying not to say
9-11! Please, someone edit an explosion.
Yeah. It's big, it's scary, it's camel. All right, we'll speed run a few of the other ones. Posthumous.
Yeah.
What you all got?
F.
Bad.
I'm cool with that.
Bad.
Yeah, it's just
don't even play it in the structure deck. If you have a sealed event you're doing of structure decks, do not pick this one. It's got good staples. That's the only reason you get the starter deck.
Night Venom on here.
Sadly horrible.
Yeah, local legend.
Yeah. Not as bad as Posthumous.
The only thing I will say on this, I'm not going to dwell on it too much, is if all of a sudden Dense Fog becomes one of the best counters in the game, this deck will be good.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, this is effectively Dense Fog.deck in a lot of ways. And it's got some decent like stats. It's got some decent stuff you can do, but it is just ride or die on Dense Fog.
Yeah, the way that this deck is positioned too, I wouldn't be surprised if in future sets we get like titles of Dense Fog to make this deck even better.
Oh, please.
That'd be really cool.
Please.
Yeah.
That'd be so incredible.
Drakking, Draqueens, and casters of all Nexus forms.
R.I.P. Hold on, where is it? R.I.P. to my boy. Swollen Josh can't see, but I've got my Stellar Drakking in a fucking prison right now.
Like, are you saying like Rogue?
I don't. I think like there's just better water things you can be doing than this. Like it hasn't been great. Yeah. I don't think it will be great. I think it's like local legend Rogue at best.
I think the only argument I have for it being a little bit better is Schnark.
But if you're playing Schnark, you should be playing Joblin instead, I think.
Yeah.
Like they're just better decks to be playing. It's one of those issues where like the cards are like almost there, but there's a better thing you could be playing instead. And so every time you roll up to locals with Dragon, like, man, I could be playing the better version of this deck if I swapped 7 cards, 3 of which are Drakking.
True. That's so true. Voldusk. Where do we put in Voldusk? The Lunar Phases deck, specifically Pure.
I think it's probably Rogue. There's a bunch of stuff that makes me scared about this deck and its performance. We talked about Spoiled Fruit earlier. Yes. Spoiled Fruit hits Voldusk. The Lunar Phase stuff is cool. It's one of my favorite decks in the set, but I can't justify it being higher than Rogue.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Let's talk about Phasmacore, which is like it's a deck that, and I guess a boss monster, a card, a theme, if you will, several other cards in there that are just reviving itself, right? Effectively Lunar Reanimator in some case, but it's a big body, right? And that's kind of the other theme of this season, if you will. I actually want to put this one maybe in like Rogue or the local legend. I don't know how good this will be, just because like the payoff for this is not much better than just going for like a Pharogeist for another type of Lunar if you're trying to go for big bodies. And there's other decks on this list that do the big body shenanigans better anyways. And this I think gets expensive really fast. Fulgoryx? Question mark? The A-Drive savior.
F is for Fulgoryx.
F is for Fulgoryx. No. This deck is cool. I think this deck might even
I'd say
be
it's
like
a little bit better than that.
You can place
it's
it
not
higher.
Posthumous bad.
It's not Posthumous bad.
It's not great. If you're playing against Lunar, it's unplayable.
The only thing I will say in local legend for this one too is that like it is not as good at putting out damage as something like Trifernal as quickly or as like cohesively, but it is a pretty scary aggro deck that you can play. Like talking about like Lunar Tempo, that might be it.
Well, if no one at your locals plays Lunar, you will shred them with the deck.
Yeah, true. Yeah. That's the other thing is that like if you are with the prominent amount of Lunar we're seeing inside this meta, and maybe potentially Solar, who knows? This deck gets worse.
Nabi isn't doing shit at 4 attack into a Lunar deck. Sorry.
That's also really fair. I'm actually down to move down to F tier because
put it over Posthumous though. It's
true.
Yeah. Everything else can be unordered. That is ordered.
Fair. All right, we have one more Lunar on this list. Kind of. We have some hybrids in here, but we have this Lycavoid is like a Lunar aggro strategy. Josh, do you want to talk about this one a little bit, and then where we want to rank it?
This, in my opinion, is the 5's replacement. I think that this is top tier.
Interesting.
This deck is scary. It's very good. Has a lot of interesting tools. The flavor of Lunar aggro that you can play can vary a lot. You can still do a lot of like the splashing of other elements. Like you can still do Galaxy stuff if you wanted to in this deck, but it gets to play like Temple of the Moon with the full moon Lunar phase to pump out crazy damage, turbo out Lycavoid, take advantage of what's the Porky Wraith.
Yep.
Do a lot of cool stuff with that too. If we're heading into a Lunar meta like that, I think that's cool. I know we talked about how Solar kind of flopped on its release in Daybreak. It would be nice to see Lunar actually do something in its themed set, and I think it will. And this will probably be the Lunar deck to do that.
Yeah, the card quality of Lunar cards are just so much higher than the Solar stuff. Like, it's sad because I love the Solar stuff. They had a lot of very interesting things. But the reality is Comalis into Pharogeist is 10,000 times better than Exaltus into Celestial. Like, not even a comparison. Not even close. Not even close.
Now, speaking of Trish's wallet, you guys talk about Dracoray. This deck I think is really cool. I don't know if it's meta contender for me personally, but it's like the fact of its first light. You know, this deck like wants to use Dracoray to go into Cockray to go into Dracoray. The name's still just so funny to me. And you can potentially splash in the cows in there for first lights and the Apollo mills. And it's where Solar kind of goes from here. Solar finally has like a game plan that's not specifically like wait for Celestial. And it's cool. I think it's a cool deck. I don't know if it's like particularly strong against some of these other like contenders, but I'm glad to see Solar getting like a game plan together.
The other thing that this deck can do, and I know I've seen some experimentation, a shout out to Dymax, is doing is doing Solar Stall, and you play Calfmel in this deck too.
Calfmel is so sick.
So if you even hard ascend a Dracoray over top of a Calfmel, you heal 6.
That's tight. Shout out to my girl Mel. Like, Calfmel is underrated for sure.
This is where Spoiled Fruit I think goes crazy though, because you make a Dracoray and I Spoiled Fruit that shit, I feel fucking phenomenal.
I don't think it can go up from Rogue for that reason.
Yes, I agree. I think that if not for exactly Spoiled Fruit popping Dracoray, this could easily be a meta contender, but it's the exact same problem that the Lunar Phase deck has. Like, Goldusk needs to stick, Dracoray needs to stick. Like, they need to do that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a deck that I love, near and dear to my heart. It is one that I've named years and years ago now, but now finally it has come to fruition. If anyone's familiar with the legend of BBC or Big Bug Control, Bug Snacks, however you want to slice it, this and Titan deck, effective as we call it. I'll be the first to say it. It's local legend, unfortunately. This deck is really cool. You could technically play this deck inside of like late Daybreak format with the Ardvarum, and you could go Arbud and Ardvarum, but this deck gets Titan finally, which is a really cool payoff for the strategy. but it's still a little bit too slow. Ardbud, when it's key players, is a little bit too small in stats. It's a classic case of a rogue slash like local legend deck of like, when this thing goes off, it wins. And that's true. I think that is true for its main combo line, which is to like ascend into the Ardvarm, into the End-Titan. But it's still not quite good enough, I think, for what it wants to do. Really cool, really fun. I don't know anything better than local legend though.
So hear me out.
Oh no.
Here, I need you to hear me out.
Oh no.
I won't actually. Nope. Mute.
Sure. Yep. All right. Next deck.
Shut up.
I'm just saying I haven't tested End-Titan that much, but I have a feeling that End-Titan might have the same benefits that Centaurbor does. That's all I'm saying.
I do.
I won't say meta contender because I haven't get that thing out of top tier.
All right, we'll put it in a rogue for now.
There's potential. There is potential.
Man, I'm 9/11 tier then. It's quite literally like 9/11 tier reserved for specifically this deck. Needs further investigation. I think it's fun. I like this deck. It's neat. I'm not a believer yet. I'll needs to be seen. Needs to be seen on the BBC. Let's show me your BBC, and I'll believe.
Shut up, dude. Shut up.
Sick.
Dude.
We're so back. It's great. All right, moving on. We have Thunder. We'll talk about Thunder and with just another Magneros. Where do y'all want to put this one?
I mean, you're the Thunder expert.
I honestly think this thing could be meta contender. I think we've seen Thunder put up some good results, but I also think that Thunder is doing like it got its Nexuser back, right, with the form of Magneros. Technically, you could do things like Electromite, which is pretty cool, which I think is neat. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see it there. However, I'm kind of down to put it also in Rogue as well. If the case that we see Thunder really get optimized and really start taking advantage of its tools, if we do get stuff back, for example, like Unk, like Arcolith, then I think this deck could be really scary. Otherwise, though, I think that sitting on Astro Pass, similar to Smoltuga Pass, isn't enough, and the deck is seemingly just that again.
One race really hurts.
Yep, that too.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask the question that we're all thinking. Thunder invoke runes where?
Yeah,
I think that single-handedly makes this card awful. Like, it's just a Nexuser that's a 2/4. Like, that's all it is. I guess you can add Hurricane off this. Sorry, there's 3 cards you can add off this. If Race to Top comes back, then maybe I could see it, but it's just like not fit.
Speaking of Hurricane, talk about some wind stuff in here. Okay, we'll talk about the Dynamax of it all. What are the and Snorfrix? Joshua, what's this card?
Enfornax.
This card's good.
This is insane, right? This is like
a contender.
Yeah.
This is nuts.
Yeah.
What's with this deck?
This is potentially, I think, maybe one of the best 2-drops that they've ever printed in terms of consistent removal. It doesn't just happen once. Its defense is massive. Theoretically, it can get a good enough stat line to attack. This is like a good all-around body. The only thing that I'm worried about with this card is if Pharogeist is so good and Enfornax can't deal with it because it can't bounce it back to the hand. So that is something that you might have to worry about.
I feel like that's not that big of a deal because Enfornax players can just play things like Artemis side, and that single-handedly makes it not a problem.
True.
Yeah.
You just suppress the Pharogeist, bounce it anyway.
I'm curious to see if Artemis sees play.
Yeah. I think that this card's crazy, and I legitimately think, hear me out, Tower of Winds. Tower of Winds.
I think in some way. Yeah.
Potentially.
Like you can turbo this out. Like you could play to fire or in wind. I played with this card a little bit. It's very good.
This card is silly and kind of goofy, by the looks of it, but that's a little bit deceiving. I've heard the stories, and I'm not looking forward to queuing up against this specifically.
This freak of nature.
Let's talk about Tornadogin or Tornadogin, Windjin, that whole engine, the genie line. Pretty cool deck. I'm down putting this one in meta contender. For me personally, what do you guys think?
I would agree. It's still definitely a deck that needs more testing. I haven't found anything too crazy with it, but there's just no way it's bad. Like I can't justify to myself how this card is bad. It just hasn't performed well yet.
Yeah, I don't know if this one's gonna crack. Honestly, I'm like rereading the effects here. I don't know if this is
add a counter rune from your deck to your hand.
I mean, Yeah,
add a
hypothetically.
limited card from your deck to your hand.
No, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do
does.
that.
Earthquake, Laurels, Ambro.
The thing that I think
One of those is not limited, jackass.
Earthquake, Laurels, Lavalith.
All right, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know,
Race to the top.
No, this card is cool. It's like the whole engine and the whole line is really interesting. I like the little tiny one that gets into the big buff guy, right? That's also really interesting that haven't seen except for in like maybe just solar proper, right? So wind having that foretell into ascend is like also kind of nice. I think there'll be some scary foretell shenanigans that will also occur here, but it probably will just take a player to like sit here and go nuts, right?
Oh wait, I've cooked the line. You go Windjin, look at your top 3. You Tower of Winds, Nexus to it, Ascend, Tornadian. However, you get to foretell 3, call whatever you know is on top of your deck, add to hand, then Tornadian, add something to deck to hand.
Yep, like the value
you just
seems
get to
crazy.
add that.
That is what people are doing.
Maybe you're selling me here. Maybe this is kind of good actually. I might get.
Like you're gonna hit.
I also y'all know the meme of like the pecs and the person's like on the pecs.
Yes.
This.
I agree.
Yeah.
I need that Tornadian spiritually.
Yeah, it's a basic psychological and physical needs all in one.
Exactly. Yeah. That is Maslow right there. That's Maslow's whole hierarchy.
For that reason, top tier.
Look, I've got a degree in psych. I can say this. I can say this with confidence. They gave me a bachelor of science to say this. They don't want you to know this.
This is what they're keeping from you. Petition for Agive to ban this card for 1 day. That way we can tweet that out. That'd be so sick.
It's just titty.
It's
That's what happened when Demeter got limited, dude. What the
true.
fuck?
This is
Zeus. They took titties from us.
Thank God. All right.
Anyway, Armadawn.
So Armadawn is a deck that is spiritually the same of a deck we've seen so far, which is a deck called Chains Position. Take a shot every time I'm saying the word deck. The Armadawn says your opponent has to expend when a Elestral changes position, right? So the idea is
when it changes position.
Excuse me. So the idea is that you can use cards like Mudlet, cards like Eddy, cards like Tsunami, to kind of whittle your opponent down ever so slightly and just kind of play a position control strategy, right? I'm down to put this in meta contender on some level. I think the deck was really scary last format, but I can also see arguments for Rogue.
I'm going to say Rogue just because when you don't see Armadawn, the deck doesn't do anything. Eddy and Mudlet have really lost their power, especially as, like, again, the stat lines of these Elestrals keep going higher and higher and higher. And sometimes Eddy just can't deal with whatever's on your field. And even 6 defense is incredible, but there's just so many ways to deal with even a 6 defender now that it's
Lycavoid swing?
Not that bad. Yeah. Well, even with Zeus and Demeter coming back, Elechic outs this, any 4 or a 5 plus Demeter and Zeus outs this. It's not going to be nearly as much of a menace as what it would if this card came out in Daybreak.
This is a perfect example of a card that should have come out of set earlier. Because like especially if Lycavoid is a top tier, Lycavoid itself doesn't get over, but there's so many other cards in the deck that get you there that like Armadawn is begging to be exploded for 7 piercing damage. Something like.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think this card, Armadawn specifically, is really cool in theory, and also, in the set of a Daybreak 5s meta, would be a really interesting counterplay, would have been like a cool little defensive option that even 5s could even play itself. I want to see change position top, and I think this is probably the closest it will be to doing so. TBD on if that's going to be the case, but maybe someone will sneak in, Moving on to some of those scarier decks inside of the meta.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about Morphrost. We've got some new cards. You got the Scorpion form, and then also a card called Aurora Borealis, which is a card that I think is really deceptive, but also really cool. I know, Josh, you've experimented a little bit with Terror Control. Is effectively the new way of doing it. We're thinking meta contender, right?
Yeah, it is crazy to me how much even just Scorpio changes for this deck. All of a sudden, this deck swarms way faster than it used to. Where before you have to rely on your opponent to like target something or target your terror and you discard a bat. Now your Lycan is Earthquake and a Reborn in one card. In the late game, that's devastating when you're bringing back a bombs, multiple terrors. under Mountains of Boreas, those cards are near unoutable. Way better than I expected it to be. Aurora Borealis is also a very welcome addition. Also allows you to pop cards on your opponent's turn if you pitch Bat and bring back a Scorpio too. Also outs Pharogeist. I'll say it. It outs Pharogeist.
Yeah, that's true.
It's unbelievable.
True. I want to see Morphrost win. We've been talking about how awesome that deck is since it came out in Frostball. And I think finally, maybe this is it. This might be it.
We're just prophets a couple sets late, Just
hey,
saying.
Surely Solar in set 5, right?
True.
Surely, the prophecy.
So we talked about Joblin a little bit earlier in regards to Drakking. Caleb, how do you feel about Joblin? You're saying that it's better in your water strategy, effectively. Like
she jaw on my blin till I swap to positions and draw a card.
Oh my god,
this card's sick. Look,
that was a stretch.
I think I made a tweet on the Knots account of something like that. I don't know. I think this card's sick. I think this deck's sick. I love water. I love looter. Those are the 2 Elestriad seasons I played so far. I'd stick it like rogue to meta contender. I haven't tested enough as of late to be able to speak super confidently on where it lands. But I think this is a very real deck that you need to be afraid of, or prepared for at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, be afraid of the shark. Yeah, I think it's funny because like Snark itself is a really cool card. Like the pool that it can search is pretty nice, so it's a little versatile. Water, of course, having natural tsunami immunity. And then, I don't want to say it's too early for Coastalith, but no, I think that like there's something here for sure. I do think Water as an engine is really powerful. Galaxy is still pretty strong overall as like an Elestral to play. Will this Water Good Stuff deck just be Water Good Stuff still? Or is Snark in the more like aggro like advantage engine gonna take up over the top? I kind of believe in the latter. I think that this I'm a Snark believer.
Shark.
He's just a silly little guy.
This is a guy.
He is.
He's a little silly guy.
He's just a little guy that turns into an 8/4.
True. All right.
If only Snark had the Rocket Hard Place Ascension condition.
Oh my god.
Adds that. Searches goes. Actually, that would be killer. This thing would be top tier at that point.
Yeah, this would be insane.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of little guys that turn into big guys, Supernova Star Bit. This deck's cool. I don't know if it's meta contender or like we're just really good rogue deck, honestly. But like I'm kind of down to put it here too. The fact that it's cool.
I played the fuck out of this deck.
It's nice to see a water deck finally have some aggro potential. Water, besides Drakking, has always just kind of been this like slow, floaty heal deck. And it's nice that we finally have a card that can just explode. Literally.
Yeah. It does so much damage. That's so
the thing that's really rough about this deck is it just loses to shield. And there's nothing you can do about it. You lose the Supernova effect, it wasn't destroyed, you don't get to Nexus your spirits and draw a card. If your opponent's playing shield and they have one, you just lose.
Yeah, that's fair.
This I think that this deck is yet another instance of Water Reanimator might save her. Being able to, Supernova can't be normal cast, but that doesn't mean that bitch can't be special cast from the underworld with a Rise from the Depths. I don't care if it doesn't get the effect to Nexus. It's a 1-cost 7/2. Like, that's fucked up. Like, there's some I think that this bare minimum slots really well into a Water Reanimator list, but as its own deck, I also think it's very, very good.
Yeah.
I played the you should play this deck as Water Reanimator. This is Water Reanimator now.
It'll be, it's funny. I think that Starbit will turn into like the Bears of this meta, where it's like it's a fan favorite. Anytime it's gonna pop up on stream or in a tournament, people are gonna like pog off. It's gonna be like, yo, Starbit, let's go.
Real.
Water has a lot of tools, and if you give it even better aggro, that might be the thing that also fixes it. Again, we're talking about Joblin, but like this is the feel good version of the Joblin side of it, where it's like Joblin's dark and scary. This deck is cool and fun.
Shout out to all my Starby fans.
All right, so we have one baby boy that's been staring at us the entire time, and we got to flush this thing down into the toilet. It's just like it's the worst deck we've ever seen. I don't think we'll be hearing any arguments.
I agree.
Don't play this deck. Just don't do it.
Don't
this
even
deck's
cut the video.
Goodbye, Lestrad Faithful. Don't forget to use our referral code and let us know in the comments down below.
Use the referral code. Please give us money. Thank you.
Go subscribe to Ed to Wirtz and MBT. Yeah, are they gone?
Holy shit.
This deck's crazy.
Okay, time to get passionate about this for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, pop off quick.
I am stress testing this deck because there's no way it should be this good. In its current state, is the best deck of the format that you shouldn't play at a tournament. And the reason I say that is that unless you want your tournament run to be completely dependent on luck, and if you misplay at all, it's over, then you should play something else. This deck is extremely difficult to play. One misstep means you lose, but if you play it correctly, there will be 2 to 3 Blistrix on your field by the end of turn 2 or 3. It's unbelievable.
Yup. Preach, brother, preach. It's
Taking the church.
This deck is funny. So in early testing for Moonrise, it was like, oh hey, we're gonna test some lunar stuff. Oh hey, we'll test some frost stuff. And like this deck traumatized myself, Trish, and like 4 other people before it was like, okay, we need to find if this thing has a counter. And that, to be fair though, again, the caveats that Josh was talking about, how you do have to play this deck extremely well. The RNG can really mess you up, and there are ways to absolutely like handle the big bodies on board, right? But it has the strengths of the Pharogeist side, where it's like lack of removal is like this deck's biggest strength, and also the fact that like you can just out-tempo your opponent. But again, could out-tempo your opponent, I guess I should say, just because the mills have to be that good. This deck is a mill deck, so fun and cool. Welcome back to Tier Limit. But yeah, very scary so far.
And to also put onto that too, I know we've talked about Hurricane and how that card's good. This deck doesn't need it, and it plays through back row like butter. Even if your opponent has triple Gorgons, you can play through it.
Fucked up deck. It's really awesome. I remember this was, I think, the first deck I played versus Ren when we were testing Moonrise before anyone else had played. And Ren rolls up with a list that looks almost identical to how their list looks now, and I think very close to how your list currently looks, with maybe like 6 card different. I remember by turn 2, there were at least 3 2-drops on board, and it was like, what the fuck do I do? I'm playing Bold Dust. Like, I can't do shit with this. How does any deck handle this, actually? Like, I'm being swung for 7 every turn. Like, there's nothing I can do. It's turn 2.
Yeah, it's very scary. I will say too, one thing we haven't talked about with this deck, it will just dump spirits, right? Kind of the point of this deck too is to turbo out those big bodies to get some advantage. But like I was saying earlier with the burn side of stuff, or even Pharogeist, some of the reasons why we think those decks might see some prevalence inside the meta is because one of the best decks in the form of this deck does burn through its spirits pretty fast. This is not to say that you should just like, buy on burn cards and just play burn because that's the counter.
Still eruptions to the moon.
It is true. Eruption stonks up. But it will be interesting to see how people build around this deck. And it's definitely not tier 0 is the big boogeyman word.
Yeah, it's not.
It's definitely not that. But it is real powerful, with some interesting downsides. I'll say interesting, just for fun.
I think the one quote I always say with Blistrix, and I hope I'm not right, but if you're playing against Blistrix, you have no say as to whether or not you won or lost that game. It's going to be completely up to your Blistrix opponent if they win or lose.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It's cool. This deck is cool though. It's fun to play, and it's really rewarding. If you gamble.
This is the most fun deck I've ever played in Elestrals by far. Sing
right.
across from it, not so much. But
true.
Yeah. Pokemon ass deck.
You go to locals and it's Josh on Blistrix.
I mean, that's just called playing Lorcana, from what I've heard.
True. Fair. Okay, so I think that's it. That's all the decks we have to talk about inside of Moonrise. I'm sure we'll see other decks form and come up as the meta develops and as people make some brews. And I'm sure that, you guys also who are watching this might think that some of these decks deserve to be higher or lower, depending on your own play sessions. And I'm just going to say that you're wrong now. But...
Owned. Simply owned.
But if you guys let us know...
A-Drive said that's how it is.
It's just that simple. The meta is what we bring. It's and we're bringing this. No, but with that being said, thank you so much for watching this tier list video for Moonrise. To maybe get to some ideas of what we're looking at as this upcoming meta develops. Let us know what you guys are playing or what you are experimenting with in the comment section down below. As well, leave a video with a like. Subscribe for more Moonrise and more Elestrals and Elestronauts content as well. Really excited for some upcoming stuff, not only with this, but also like, you know, Clash is on the way, doing amazing work so far. This is a really exciting time for Elestrals, and I'm glad that we get to like have so much, you know, excitement be thrown at us right now. Anything to say, guys?
Never been a better time to be a caster, let's be honest.
So true. So true.
We didn't really ever leave, but we're certainly so back.
We're so back. Absolutely. All right. Well, we're so over right now. Thanks for watching this video. We'll talk to you later. All right. Bye-bye. Peace out.
Bye-bye.
See ya.